Yo, welcome back for another episode of Into the Flu. It was requested that I do a couple deck techs, and I'm always happy to fulfill any requests that any of the viewers have. So if I'm able to do it, then I'm more than happy to. So this is going to be a Quidditch deck. Neville Longbottom is the starting character. So what I'm going to do is just kind of run through all of the cards that I have in the deck, and then we'll just kind of chat about it. So for those who don't know, Neville Longbottom's ability is you may prevent all but the first 8 damage done to you on each turn. So this is pretty cool because sometimes, that damage just continues to stack up, and that means that if somebody has like 10 damage or 12 damage that they're trying to do to you, you can prevent all but the first 8. So you're still going to take that 8 damage, but it's definitely better than 10, 12, or something crazy, especially if they're playing a Quidditch deck against this one, or if you have Neville as a starting character, but they're playing a Quidditch deck against you. You'll see when we get to the matches that some of the damage could actually be almost double this, and so it'll definitely save you. So you may prevent all but the first 8 damage done to you each turn. All right, so aside from Neville being the primary character, our starting character, I do have another couple characters that I've added to this deck. So Madame Pomfrey is a really good addition to almost any deck, So for those who don't know, Madame Pomfrey's ability is once per game, you may shuffle up to 12 non-healing cards from your discard pile into your deck. So you notice that deck kind of getting low. You don't really know which way you're going to turn, especially if you've got someone doing all that damage to you. In this case, you can still prevent, but you're still going to be taking that damage. So it might be nice to sort of fill up that deck with some of the cards that you have in your discard pile. And so with that, it might be that you have lessons out and you just need some more spells, you need some more creatures, so then you can sort of choose those 12 non-healing. They have to be non-healing, but you can choose those 12 cards, whatever it is that you want, to put back into your deck. So it could potentially help you during your next draw or whatever. So I like to have that. And then the next one that I have is Lee Jordan. So Lee Jordan is a specific starting character that assists with Quidditch. So let's read what his ability is. You may use an action to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Put all of those cards that need Quidditch power into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So having a card like this that's within a Quidditch deck is always nice because you can use one action to reveal 3 cards as opposed to using, your 2 actions to reveal 2 cards, and then it's kind of a waste of actions, right? So you use one action, you reveal the top 3, and then if it is a Quidditch deck, then the majority of those, assuming maybe even all of them, would require that Quidditch power, and then you can just add them into your deck. So it's just kind of a nice addition. Now, of course, when you do play an additional character, witch or wizard or any character, it requires the 2 actions. So you definitely want to make sure that depending on how the game is going, that you're able to do that, because 2 actions is a lot, and then, it ends up just kind of being all you can do that turn. So there's also 19 Quidditch lessons that I have in this deck. This is Mia. She keeps whining in the background, so if you hear that, it's just her. This is a dog, believe it or not. She's 14. That's crazy, right? I know. Love you. Thanks. Now, let's get to the spells. So we've got a training program, which does require 7. You're going to draw 2 cards. Then you may put up to 2 Quidditch lesson cards from your hand into play. So this is good, even though it is a bit expensive. We'll get to some assistance with the required lesson power once we get to some of the other cards. But this is pretty cool because you can draw 2 cards and then you can put up to 2 lessons. So you're able to do a couple different things, which is why I like that card. So we've also got Catching Apples, which is a spell. Do 3 damage to your opponent. Then if your opponent has any cards in play, he or she chooses one of them and returns it to their hand. The thing I really like about this theme within the Quidditch decks is that, the Quidditch cards, is that there's always do this and that. You know, because Quidditch is like a brutal game that it's not just ever going to be like one hit. It's going to be one hit and you're going to miss and you're going to get knocked off your broom and, you know, whatever. I don't know. It's always so fun because you'll kind of notice that there's sort of this do couple of things for each one of them. So Catching Apples is a really good one. We've got 3 bias commentaries in the deck. So this is a spell. It costs 3. The next time this turn you play a spell card that needs Quidditch power, if that card does damage to your opponent, it does 5 more damage. So this is something that you could play with Catching Apples, for example. So you would play this card, and if the next card does damage, then you would do 5 more. So these two together would do 8 damage. So it doesn't do anything on its own. It's not damage on its own. You would need an accompanying card, but that's why, you know, you're building a Quidditch deck. You're going to have more Quidditch cards, etc. We've got 3 Ouch in this deck. Do 5 damage to your opponent. Then if your opponent has any cards in his or her hand, he or she chooses one of them and discards it. So they're not returning it to their hand. They're completely discarding it, which is definitely an ouch. So you're doing that 5 damage, which is a huge amount, and then they also have to get rid of something. So we've got 4 Searching for the Snitch. So Searching for the Snitch, you search your deck. You may take a Quidditch lesson or card that needs Quidditch power from your deck, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So this is always nice, you know, if you're looking for a specific card. An example of a specific card that you might be looking for is our next one, which is Catch the Snitch. So Catch the Snitch is a really good card to play, of course, in Quidditch decks, obviously, with matches. And we're going to get to the matches in just a minute, so I'm going to put this to the side and we'll chat about them with the matches. The next card we have is Zigzag. Put a non-healing Quidditch card from your discard pile into your hand. This is always a really good card, you know. Anytime that you can sort of go into your discard pile and pull something that your opponent has discarded, it's always nice, you know. So we've got 3 of those. Next, we've got 3 Slytherin Steals. Do 2 damage to your opponent. Then if your opponent has any cards in play, he or she chooses one of them and discards it. There's always this disclaimer here with any cards in play, which is just other than his or her starting character, you know, you can't discard yourself because you're playing as your starting character, which in this case is going to be Neville. All right, so those are the spells that we've got, and I'm going to now introduce our horizontal cards, and I'll introduce matches first. So I'll bring back these, which is kind of what we were talking about just a couple seconds ago. So the match cards are always really good to have because it's a match between you and your opponents. And so this one, for example, to win, do 30 damage to your opponent while this card is in play. That damage doesn't have to be done all at once. Obviously, that would be kind of hard. But essentially, you know, so when you put this card in play, it stays in play. The horizontal cards usually do. So you would put this card in play, it stays in play, and once this is done, so you would get some dice or counters or whatever, and as each of you does damage to the other person, so let's say my opponent does 5 damage to me, this is here in play, I would take my dice and I would put 5 on my side, and let's say the next turn I do 5 damage to my opponent, they would take their dice or their counter and they would turn it to 5 so that we can keep track. Whoever gets to this 30 first is able to win the prize. In this case, the prize is the winner does 15 damage to his or her opponent. So this is wild, right? I mean, we're talking like you already did 30 damage to me, and now you're going to do 15 damage in addition to, right? So like in order for you to win this, you have to do 30. So you're just kind of stacking them on. So having someone like Neville as your starting character might be good in this kind of case because you've got the 30 damage, but let's say they've got big creatures like Fluffy, who's going to do 12 damage. Well, I'm only going to do 8 of those. So that means that I'm still going to take that damage, but it's going to take longer for me to get to this 30 damage, right? And then when it comes to, let's say that I did lose, and so now I have to take that 15 damage, I'm only going to end up taking 8 of that. So this spell says, you win the current match. You get the prize. So something like this could be where I'll get Zigzag, and I really want to dig into my discard pile, I'll pull a Catch the Snitch. If I do have this in play, or any of the matches in play, I can just play this and I automatically get the prize. So if I were to win this match, I don't have to worry about doing this back and forth where I'm doing damage, 30 damage to see who gets that damage first. I'm just going to automatically do that 15 damage to my opponent because I've won. So, having Catch the Snitch along with a lot of different matches in your deck could be pretty helpful. Let's look at some other matches. So here we've got 4 3-month-long match. I'll put those over to the side. Slytherin match is another one. To win, do 15 damage to your opponent while this card is in play. The prize is the winner may shuffle up to 15 non-healing cards from his or her discard pile into their deck. So this is another one where if you played this and then right after you played Catch the Snitch, you wouldn't have to do all of this back and forth with the actual match itself. You would just win the prize, which is, shuffling 15 non-healing cards into your hand, into your deck. So that's, again, really helpful, especially if you notice that deck is really kind of getting pretty slim. It's always nice to be able to have that kind of help. So we've got 2 of those. Put those off to the side. The next match we have is Hufflepuff match. Do 8 damage to your opponent while this card is in play. The prize is the winner may draw 5 cards. The loser takes 5 damage. This is kind of a fun one. It's not a lot of damage, so really you could manage to do something like this in one turn. Like, for example, with that biased commentary and ouch. You could do something like that. And then you have the ability to then draw 5 cards. Now, if your deck is pretty low, then you definitely want to keep an eye on what some of these prizes are, because drawing 5 cards also means that you have 5 less in your deck, which means if your opponent ends up doing some serious damage to you, then having those 5 there to buffer that would have been nice. But, it's all in the game. So those are Hufflepuff match. The next cards that I have are a location card. So a location card is going to stay in play. You can only have 1 location in play at a time. It says right here, when you play this card, discard any other locations from play, yours or your opponent's. So this is the Quidditch pitch. Spell cards that need Quidditch power, yours and your opponent's, need 2 less power to play. So I do have 4 of these in this deck, just in case it's discarded or something like that. My opponent might not have a Quidditch deck, and so they might have a location that benefits them more. So like if they have the Owlry and they have an owl deck, or they have, Hagrid's hut and they've got a creature deck, something like that, where their location might benefit them more, then they might want to get rid of mine. And so having multiple copies I have found to be pretty beneficial. But this also helps kind of buffer some of these heavier ones like the 7, that we have over here, even some of the 5s, because getting out, lessons can be pretty difficult. I think sometimes, it can get, sometimes you just have like the luck of the draw and you're like, do I even have lessons in this deck? Are they just blank cards? Whatever. So those are definitely 4 that I enjoy. And then the last one is a Rogue Bludger. I only have 1 of these. It is 8. Again, having, something like Quidditch pitch is really helpful. Before each of your turns, your opponent takes 3 damage. So I only have 1 copy of this in here, just because, it's like if I'm able to put it out there, cool. If not, no big deal. It is pretty expensive, and I've noticed that when playing this deck, having the Quidditch pitch is helpful, but sometimes I end up, unable to get some lessons out or whatever the case is, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting enough damage in, and so I'll find myself just playing some of these spells in order to kind of get ahead, depending on who I'm playing against. So in addition to all of these, though, I also have some adventure cards that I've added into the mix. I really like adding adventures almost to every deck. I think that it kind of, helps things out in terms of my gameplay, and it's also a little bit fun, especially when you have a sort of like themed deck like Quidditch or what have you. So we've got Dragon's Escape. Before each of your turns, your opponent takes 1 damage. To solve it, your opponent chooses 3 of his or her lessons in play and discards them. The opponent's reward is your opponent may draw 3 cards or does 3 damage to you. Next one is Flying to Hogwarts. Before each of your turns, your opponent takes 2 damage. To solve, your opponent skips a total of 5 actions. They don't need to be one after the other. And your opponent's reward is your opponent may look at your hand, choose one of those cards, and discard it. This is Caught by Snape. It's Italian. So essentially, for those that don't know, your opponent is only able to play lesson cards. To solve it, they have to do this 3 times for 3 actions. And then the reward is they may put any lessons from their hand into play. So this just sort of holds them off for a little bit. It's just kind of one of those cards that kind of like blocks them from doing anything for at least those 3 actions. And, which kind of helps you either get ahead or, whatever the case might be, or just put them a little bit far behind, So I only have 1 of those, and then I do have a pep talk. The first action your opponent uses on each of his or her turns must be to draw a card. And then to solve it, your opponent shows you a card from his or her hand with a printed power needed of 8 or more. And then the reward is your opponent may draw 2 cards. So a few of these are just kind of, making sure that they're being held back a little bit, so like getting some damage done is the effect, or, you only have 1 action, so these are kind of annoying things, but only a couple of those. For this deck in particular, I notice I don't really play them too much, but every once in a while I will kind of put out like a pep talk or something, because even though there are quite a few expensive cards within this game, a lot of people who try to play regularly don't like having super expensive cards in their deck. So it might be kind of hard to find someone to be able to give you that 8 printed for Pep Talk, for example. So anyway, this is one of the Quidditch decks that I have. I'll be sure to make a couple more of these videos. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know any questions or comments, and if this deck or something similar is something that you want to build but you don't have the cards, just reach out to me and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching.